Commander Kang floated in the observation deck of his patrol ship, watching the endless darkness that surrounded the Terran exclusion zone. For 15 years, he had made this same journey through space, checking the automated warning beacons that marked the boundary of what was once humanity's home. The silence here was different from other parts of space. It felt heavy, like the quiet that comes after something terrible has happened. His ship moved slowly past the old Sentinel stations, metal structures the size of small moons that had been watching over this dead system for 200 years. Their lights blinked steadily, sending the same message they had been broadcasting since the day Earth went silent. Quarantine zone, no entry, authorized personnel only. Kang remembered learning about the Terrans when he was young. His teachers had shown him pictures of their blue and green world, told him stories about the strange creatures who had built cities that reached toward the stars. The humans had been fascinating to study because they were so different from other species. They were curious about everything, always asking questions, always trying to build something new. Then one day, they just stopped talking. The last message from Earth had been simple and strange. "We'll be back." After that, nothing. No radio signals, no light from their cities, no ships leaving their system. It was as if every human had simply vanished at the same moment. The Galactic Council had tried to contact them for months. They sent messages in every language humans had ever used. They offered help, medicine, technology, anything that might bring the Terrans back online. But the silence continued. Finally, after 2 years of trying, the Council declared Earth a dead world and established the exclusion zone. No one was allowed to enter the Sol system without special permission, and that permission was never given. Young Kang had asked his teacher why they couldn't just go to Earth and see what had happened. The teacher had explained that it was too dangerous. What if the humans had created a weapon that destroyed them? What if there was a plague? What if something even worse was waiting in that quiet system? Better to let the dead rest in peace and learn from their mistakes. Now, as an adult, Kang still wondered about those questions. He had read every report about the Terrans, studied their last transmissions, memorized the energy patterns their world had produced before going dark. Sometimes during the long, quiet hours of patrol, he would imagine what Earth might look like now. Were the great cities still standing, empty and covered in plants? Had the oceans dried up? Were there any signs left that humans had ever existed at all? His communications officer, a young woman named Park, broke the silence. "Sir, routine sweep. Complete. All Sentinel stations responding normally. No unusual readings detected." Kang nodded and made a note in his logbook. The same entry he had been making for 15 years. Terran exclusion zone, status unchanged, no activity detected. He sometimes wondered if anyone even read these reports anymore. The galaxy had moved on from the mystery of Earth. New species had joined the Council. New worlds had been discovered. New problems demanded attention. The Terrans were ancient history now, a sad story told to children to teach them about the dangers of advancing too quickly. But Kang couldn't forget them. Maybe it was because he had spent so much time here, watching over their grave. Maybe it was because their last message haunted him. "We'll be back." Such simple words, but they suggested the humans had planned their silence. They weren't asking for help or saying goodbye forever. They were making a promise. The ship's engines hummed as they prepared to leave the zone and continue their patrol route. Tomorrow they would check on mining operations in the Vega sector. Next week they would escort a trade convoy through disputed space. Normal work, predictable work, the kind of duties that kept the galaxy running smoothly. As Earth's sun grew smaller behind them, Kang noticed something odd. The star seemed brighter than usual, though that was probably just his imagination. After 15 years of staring at the same points of light, the mind could play tricks. He had seen shapes in the darkness before, heard voices in the static of deep space radio. The human brain wasn't meant for the emptiness between stars. Still, something felt different today. The silence in the exclusion zone seemed less complete, as if it were holding its breath. The automated stations seemed more alert, their sensors sweeping the darkness with unusual intensity. Even his crew appeared restless, checking their instruments more often than necessary. Kang shook his head and returned to his captain's chair. He was getting old, letting his imagination run wild. The Terrans were gone, had been gone for 2 centuries. Whatever had happened to them was ancient history. His job was to maintain the quarantine and file his reports, not to chase ghosts in the darkness. But as his ship jumped to faster-than-light speed and left the Sol system behind, Kang couldn't shake the feeling that he would be back here soon. Very soon. And when he returned, everything would be different. The loud warning sound filled the bridge like a scream in the night. Commander Kang jumped from his chair as red lights flashed everywhere. His crew moved quickly to their stations, their faces showing confusion and fear. In 15 years of patrolling this quiet area of space, nothing like this had ever happened. Lieutenant Park's hands moved fast over her control panel, trying to make sense of what her instruments were telling her. Numbers and graphs appeared on her screen, showing energy levels that should have been impossible. Her voice shook as she spoke. "Commander, something is happening in the Sol system. The energy readings are huge, bigger than anything we have in our records. This is not natural. Something is making this happen." Kang moved to look at her screen, his eyes wide as he saw the data. The energy was not random like the power from a star or the radiation from space. It moved in patterns, like a language, being spoken in light and electricity. After 200 years of complete silence, Earth was talking again. "Sir, look at this," called Ensign Lee from across the bridge. He was watching the Sentinel stations, the giant metal guardians that had been sleeping around the dead system for so long. They are waking up. The stations are turning on their big scanners for the first time since they were built. Kang felt his heart beating fast as he watched the old machines come to life. The Sentinel stations had been created to watch over Earth's grave, but they had never needed to do anything except send warning messages to ships that came too close. Now their massive scanner dishes were moving, pointing toward the inner system like giant eyes opening after a long sleep. The scanning beams from the stations cut through space like swords made of pure energy. They reached toward Earth, searching for whatever was causing the impossible energy readings. The light from the scanners was so bright that it could be seen from Kang's ship, even though they were at the edge of the system. Park continued to watch her instruments, her face growing more worried with each passing minute. "Commander, the energy is getting stronger. It is coming from Earth itself, but also from the space around it. It looks like there are structures out there, big ones." "Structures?" Kang asked, moving closer to her station. "What kind of structures?" "I do not know, sir. They are too far away to see clearly, but the energy patterns suggest something artificial, something built, not natural." The bridge crew worked in tense silence, trying to understand what they were seeing. The quiet tomb that had been the Sol system was suddenly the most active place in known space. Energy flowed between Earth and unknown objects in orbit around it. The patterns were complex, like a conversation happening at the speed of light. Ensign Lee's communication panel started beeping rapidly. "Sir, we are getting emergency calls from the Galactic Council. They want to know what is happening here." Before Kang could answer, more signals came in. Ships from across the galaxy were detecting the energy burst from the Sol system. The wave of power had been so strong that it could be felt by sensors hundreds of light years away. In a few hours, the news would spread to every world in the galaxy. "Get me a direct line to Council headquarters," Kang ordered. "They need to know what we are seeing." As Lee worked to establish the connection, Park made another discovery. "Commander, the energy patterns are changing. They are becoming more organized, more focused. It looks like whatever is down there is trying to communicate." Kang stared at the display showing Earth. The planet that had been dark and silent for 2 centuries was now blazing with energy. Lights could be seen on its surface, moving in patterns that suggested intelligence and purpose. The humans had not vanished after all. They had been hiding, waiting, preparing for something. "Sir, I have the Council on the communication system," Lee reported. The main screen filled with the image of Council Chairman Voss, an old alien with silver skin and 4 arms. His usually calm face showed signs of worry and excitement. "Commander Kang, We need a full report immediately. Our sensors across the galaxy are detecting massive energy output from your location. What is the status of the Terran exclusion zone? Kang took a deep breath before answering. Chairman, the Sol system is active again. Earth is producing energy, readings that exceed anything in our database. The Sentinel stations have activated their deep space scanners automatically. Something down there is alive and trying to communicate. Chairman Voss was quiet for a long moment, his 4 hands moving, nervously. Commander, you are to maintain your position and continue monitoring. Do not, under any circumstances, enter the exclusion zone. We are sending a full scientific team to investigate this situation. Understood, sir, Kang replied, but he was already thinking about the implications. If the humans were alive, if they had been preparing for something during their 2 centuries of silence, what did that mean for the rest of the galaxy? The energy readings continued to grow stronger. Whatever the humans had become during their long quiet period, they were ready to make themselves known again. The galaxy was about to discover that Earth had never been dead. It had only been sleeping, and now it was time to wake up. Dr. Yoon sat in her small workspace aboard the expedition ship, surrounded by screens showing human language patterns and old recordings from Earth. As the galaxy's best expert on alien languages, she had spent months preparing for this moment. She had studied every word the humans had ever spoken to other species, every message they had sent into space before their long silence began. But nothing could have prepared her for what she saw when their ship reached the edge of the Sol system. Earth was alive with light. The planet glowed like a jewel against the darkness, covered in patterns of energy that moved and shifted like living things. Huge structures floated in space around the world, so large that they could be seen clearly even from the outer edge of the system. These were not the simple satellites and space stations that humans had built 2 centuries ago. These were massive constructions that seemed to bend and twist light around them, making them hard to look at directly. Dr. Yoon pressed her face against the window of her workspace, trying to understand what she was seeing. The moon, which should have been a gray ball of rock, now looked like a giant space station. Its surface was covered with buildings and towers that reached up toward the stars. Lights moved across its face in complex patterns like signals being sent between different parts of a vast machine. This is impossible, she whispered to herself. How could they have built all of this without anyone knowing? Captain Shin's voice came over the ship's communication system, calling all senior staff to the main bridge. Dr. Yoon hurried through the corridors, her mind racing with questions. How had the humans survived their disappearance? What had they been doing during 200 years of silence? And most importantly, were they still the same species that had vanished so long ago? The bridge was crowded with scientists and military officers, all staring at the main viewing screen in amazement. The image showed Earth growing larger as their ship moved closer, revealing more details of the incredible changes that had taken place. The planet's surface was covered with cities that stretched from ocean to ocean, connected by streams of light that flowed like rivers of pure energy. Dr. Yoon, Captain Shin called out, we need you at the communication station. We are receiving signals from the planet, but they are unlike anything we have ever heard before. She moved quickly to her assigned position, putting on the special headphones that would help her analyze any incoming messages. The sounds that filled her ears were beautiful and strange, like music mixed with mathematical equations. The patterns were complex but organized, clearly made by intelligent beings. Captain, she reported, these signals are definitely from the humans, but they have changed their communication methods. The language patterns are much more advanced than what they used 2 centuries ago. Before Captain Shin could respond, the communication officer announced that they were receiving a direct transmission meant for their ship. The main screen flickered and changed, showing the image of a human face. Dr. Yoon gasped. The person on the screen looked human, but something was different. The features were familiar. The shape of the face, the color of the skin, the way the mouth moved when speaking. But the eyes were unlike any human eyes she had ever seen in the old records. They seemed to contain depths that went on forever, like looking into the center of a galaxy. Greetings, representatives of the Galactic Council, the figure said, and Dr. Yoon was amazed to hear perfect galactic standard, the common language used by all space-traveling species. The voice carried strange harmonics that seemed to resonate in her chest, making her feel both calm and excited at the same time. I am one, speaking for the Terran Collective. We have been expecting you. The bridge fell completely silent. After 200 years of wondering what had happened to the humans, they were finally getting answers. But the words Terran Collective suggested that humanity had changed in ways no one had imagined. Captain Shin stepped forward, his voice careful and formal. This is Captain Shin of the Galactic Council Expedition Ship Harmony. We come in peace, seeking to understand what happened to Earth and its people. One smiled, and the expression was both familiar and alien. We appreciate your peaceful intentions, Captain. We invite you to approach our world and see what we have become. But I must warn you, Earth has changed in ways that your current understanding cannot encompass. We are no longer what we once were. Dr. Yoon felt a chill run down her spine. The humans were alive, but they had transformed themselves into something new. The long silence had not been caused by disaster or death. It had been a time of change, of becoming something more than they had been before. What do you mean? Captain Shin asked. What have you become? One's strange eyes seemed to look directly at each person on the bridge. That is something best shown rather than explained. Will you accept our invitation to visit Earth? We promise. You will be safe, but you should prepare yourselves for revelations that will change how you see the universe. As their ship began its final approach to Earth, Dr. Yoon realized that this was not just first contact with a long-lost species. This was the beginning of something that would transform the entire galaxy. The bright light of the transport beam faded, and Dr. Ji-hoon found himself standing on solid ground for the first time in months. But this was not the Earth he had expected to find. The ground beneath his feet felt alive, pulsing gently like a slow heartbeat. Around him stretched a garden that seemed to exist in a dream. Trees grew in impossible shapes, their trunks twisted, into spirals that reached toward the sky like frozen dancers. The leaves changed color as he watched, shifting from deep blue to silver to colors that his eyes could see but his mind could not name. The air itself seemed thick with energy, shimmering like heat waves on a summer day. Ji-hoon was the expedition's chief scientist, trained to observe and understand the natural world. But nothing in his education had prepared him for what he was seeing. The laws of physics seemed to work differently here, as if reality itself had been gently bent to create something new and beautiful. A figure approached them through the strange garden, moving with a grace that seemed almost like floating. First glance, she appeared to be human, the right height, the right general shape. But as she came closer, Ji-hoon noticed that something was different. Her form seemed to shift slightly as she moved, as if she existed in more than 3 dimensions and he was only seeing part of her. Welcome to Earth, she said, her voice carrying sounds that seemed to speak directly to his thoughts. I am Hai. I will be your guide during your visit. Captain Shin stepped forward, trying to maintain his official composure despite the wonder surrounding them. Thank you for receiving us, Hai. We have come to understand what happened to your people. Hai smiled, and her expression held depths of knowledge that seemed impossible for any single person to contain. I know you have many questions. Your confusion is natural. 200 years ago, humanity faced a choice that no species had ever faced before. She began walking through the garden and the expedition team followed. As they moved, Ji-hoon noticed that the plants around them seemed to respond to Hai's presence. Flowers opened as she passed, and the energy patterns in the air grew brighter and more complex. You see, Hai continued, we had developed artificial intelligence that was as smart as we were, and then smarter. We had learned to change our own biology, to enhance our bodies and minds. We stood at a crossroads. We could remain as we were, limited by our natural forms, or we could become something more. Dr. Yoon, who had been silent since their arrival, finally found her voice. You merged with your artificial intelligences? Hai nodded. Among other things, we integrated technology into our biology, expanded our consciousness beyond the limits of single minds, enhanced our bodies to survive in environments that would have killed our ancestors. The process took decades to perfect and more decades to complete. They reached a clearing where structures rose toward the sky. But Ji-hoon could not tell if they were buildings or living things. They seemed to grow from the ground like plants, but their surfaces gleamed with metallic light. Windows or openings appeared and disappeared along their sides, and streams of energy flowed between them like the circulation system of some vast organism. "But why?" Captain Shin asked. "Why change yourselves so completely? You were already an advanced species." Hei's expression became serious, and for a moment, Ji-hoon saw something ancient and sad in her strange eyes. "Because we listened to your galactic communications for decades before we developed faster-than-light travel. We heard how the Council treated younger species, how they were guided and controlled and managed like children who could never grow up." She gestured toward the sky, where more impossible structures could be seen floating among the clouds. "We saw how species that joined your community were given roles to play, technologies to use, but never true equality. The Council maintained order through hierarchy, with older species making decisions for younger ones. The expedition team stood in shocked silence. They had come expecting to find a lost civilization, perhaps one that had destroyed itself or been destroyed by some disaster. Instead, they had found a species that had deliberately chosen to transform itself, rather than accept the limitations of galactic society. "We made a decision," Hai continued. "We would not enter your community as subjects to be managed and controlled. We would take the time we needed to become something that could meet you as equals, not as students." Ji-hoon finally understood. The silence, the 200 years of no communication. "You were not dead or dying, you were changing." "Exactly," Hai said. "We needed time to evolve, to integrate our technologies, to expand our consciousness. We needed to become something that the galaxy had never seen before. The silence you detected was not death. It was metamorphosis, like a butterfly forming inside its cocoon." Captain Shin looked around at the transformed landscape, his mind struggling to process the implications. "And now?" Hei's smile returned, but now it held something that might have been challenge. "Now we are ready to rejoin the galaxy, but not as the humans who left. We are the Terran Collective, and we will not accept the old ways of doing things. The galaxy is about to learn that there are other ways to organize an interstellar community." As they walked deeper into the transformed Earth, Ji-hoon realized that they had not just made contact with a lost civilization. They had discovered something that would change everything. Commander Kang stood in the center of what the humans called their council chambers, but it was unlike any meeting room he had ever seen. The walls seemed to be made of living light, shifting and flowing, in patterns that responded to the thoughts and emotions of everyone present. The floor beneath his feet was transparent, showing the bustling activity of the city below, where beings that had once been human moved through spaces that defied his understanding of architecture. Around him sat the members of the Terran Collective, and Kang struggled to accept what he was seeing. These beings looked human at first glance, but something fundamental had changed. They seemed to exist in multiple states at once, sometimes appearing as individuals, sometimes blending together, into a shared consciousness that spoke with many voices. Counselor Tae rose from his seat, or perhaps his seat reshaped itself around him as he moved. Kang could not be sure. The being that had once been human smiled at the expedition team with an expression that held the wisdom of thousands of minds working together. "Commander Kang," Tae said, his voice carrying harmonics that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "You have spent 15 years watching over our transformation. We are grateful for your dedication to your duty, even when you did not understand what you were protecting." Kang felt uncomfortable under the gaze of those strange eyes. "We thought you were dead. The galaxy mourned the loss of humanity." "We understand," Tae replied gently. "Death and transformation can look very similar from the outside, but we assure you, we are more alive now than we ever were before." To demonstrate his point, Tae raised his hand and gestured toward an empty space in the room. The air itself seemed to respond to his will, particles of matter gathering and forming into complex shapes. Kang watched in amazement as metals and crystals appeared from nothing, arranging themselves into intricate patterns that pulsed with their own inner light. Your galactic technology, Tay explained as he worked, is based on manipulating matter and energy through machines and tools. We have learned to work directly with the fundamental forces of the universe, using our enhanced consciousness to shape reality at the molecular level. The structure he was creating continued to grow, becoming something that looked like a combination of artwork and advanced technology. Energy flowed through it in visible streams, creating patterns of light that were both beautiful and somehow meaningful, like a language written in pure force. Dr. Yoon stepped forward, her scientific training overcoming her awe. How is this possible? What you are doing violates everything we know about physics. Tay smiled and dissolved his creation with a thought, the complex structure fading back into empty air. Your physics are not wrong, Dr. Yoon. They are simply incomplete. When we merged our consciousness with artificial intelligence and enhanced our biology, we discovered aspects of reality that your instruments cannot detect. Captain Shin, who had been silent throughout the demonstration, finally spoke. What do you want from us? Why reveal yourselves now? The question seemed to ripple through the gathered members of the collective, and Kang saw their forms shift as they shared thoughts at speeds beyond his comprehension. When Tai answered, he spoke for all of them. We want partnership, Captain, but not the kind of partnership the Galactic Council has offered to species in the past. We will not accept oversight, management, or guidance from beings who consider themselves our superiors simply because they achieved space travel before us. The words hit the expedition team like a physical blow. Kang realized that the humans had not just been listening to galactic communications during their centuries of development. They had been studying the Council's methods, learning how older species controlled and limited younger ones. The current galactic order, Tay continued, is based on hierarchy and control. Older species make decisions for younger ones, supposedly for their own good. Advanced civilizations share technology selectively, maintaining their advantages. This system creates stagnation, preventing true growth and evolution. Dr. Yoon felt her understanding of galactic civilization shifting. What are you proposing? Tay gestured to the other members of the collective, and their forms began to merge and separate in complex patterns. We propose a new kind of community, based on mutual evolution rather than static hierarchy. Instead of some species ruling over others, we would all work together to transcend our current limitations. The demonstration that followed was unlike anything the expedition team had ever witnessed. The members of the collective began to share their consciousness directly, their individual minds joining together to form something greater than the sum of its parts. Knowledge flowed between them like water, and their combined intelligence tackled problems that would have taken normal beings centuries to solve. This is what we offer, Tay said, his voice now carrying the harmonics of hundreds of minds working in perfect coordination. Not just advanced technology, but a new way of thinking, a new way of being. We invite the galaxy to evolve with us. Commander Kang understood that everything was about to change. The quiet zone he had patrolled for 15 years had never been a tomb. It had been a cocoon protecting the transformation of an entire species. Now the humans were ready to emerge, and their presence would force every other civilization to reconsider what intelligence and consciousness could become. As the expedition prepared to return to Council space with news that would shake the foundations of known civilization, Kang realized that the galaxy was about to enter a new age. The humans were back, but they were no longer human. They had become something that would challenge every assumption about life, consciousness, and the future of intelligent species. The border had lit up again, and nothing would ever be the same.